Live from the Talking Joe studios, it's Talking Joe.
Talking Joe weekly podcast. Talking Joe is there. Talking Joe thought we would last. Talking Joe is there. Find each other like a married couple. A podcast on the air. Talking Joe is there.
Talking Joe is the code name for a completely untrained special podcast force. Its purpose, to produce a regular comic review show while breaking and replacing a series of presenters from across the world.
Talking Joe. Talking Joe is there. Talking Joe. We are on our soapbox. Nobody seems to care. Fighting for fandom wherever there's trouble. The podcast on the air. Talking Joe is there. Talking Joe. Talking Joe.
Talking Joe is on the air.
Hey, it's me, Mark, and welcome to Talking Joe, the best and longest running dedicated G.I. Joe comics podcast. We are again looking at the G.I. Joe Disavowed era, and today we are discussing G.I. Joe 629, the arc Reckonings, from Devil's Due / Image in 2002. The Devil's Due episodes are fortnightly, and they are sandwiched in between our coverage of IDW ARAH and all sorts of other fun shenanigans. In this episode, as well as covering a four-parter and the return of a classic G.I. Joe artist on cover duties, we'll be picking out our highlights and lowlights. We'll be looking at a featured toy from Jay, and egged on by Tim's enthusiasm for the segment, the Inuen-joe giggle challenge will continue. And we'll ask all of the big questions like, will Mark be able to finish recording the podcast before he is killed by his wife for being late for dinner? And can we spot any cats meowing in the background? All this and more in today's thrilling installment. So without further ado, let me introduce my co-hosts. First up, here come the Nit-Picker turn around. It's a real American Tim. It's Tim Finn.
Hi, Mark. Hello, listeners.
And rounding out our crew, it's G.I.J. It's Jay Cordray.
Hi, Joe fans.
Okay, insert sound effects. So, what's been going on this week? We had the drop of our sketchbook special as the last episode. So, doing something a little bit different rather than just releasing our standard audio podcast. Yeah, it was fun talking about art, and hopefully people enjoyed it. And Chief has already stolen the format, so we'll be seeing some talking art, talking sketchbook art. And also this week, I launched the Talking Joe Patreon, so you can head over to patreon.com/talkingjoe if you want to join in with that and support the show. If you become a Patreon member, you can get some exclusive behind-the-scenes stuff like early looks, jingles, that kind of thing. But I'm not going to make a big sing and dance about it. Unless I do. Ooh, I can make a jingle. That would be a sing and dance. But never mind. How are you guys getting on? Any excitement over the last week?
I think it's been a normal week, Jay.
Just drawing. Did you guys see my beachhead the other day?
Yeah. You did 2 beachheads, didn't you?
Yeah.
Beachhead on your mind.
Yeah. And that, if anybody thinks that might be a hint to what I talk about in Jay Talks Toys, you would probably be right. Yeah, and I came back from break, and I was pretty excited, and my buddy was like, he said, wow, you must have drank a pot of coffee or something when you were on break. And I actually had drank a Starbucks double shot espresso, but that wasn't why I was excited. I was like, well, yeah, I kind of I did, but I think more was just the buzz that you get when you draw something and it's working for you. The background on that one is lacking because it was just, like I said on our Facebook page, it was just a 30-minute inking job, and there wasn't really any background. But yeah, I felt really good about that one. Liked the way that turned out.
Nice.
I guess the news of my week is that I approved a sign manufacturer to make a new sign for my comic book store. right? We're in this renovation. Our new sign's going to be light up, but also I hired a designer to redesign the store logo, and it looks similar, but it's refreshed and lots of fun. So a local company that makes awnings and signs is starting to make our sign, and hopefully it'll get installed in a couple weeks. Although I don't think the electrician will show up to connect it until later.
Cool. It's all going on, and always a delight to see your weekly YouTube updates with the goings on at the Hub Comics renovation.
Thanks.
What's your square footage there, Tim? Like, how much is going to be actual store space? Because the area that you show in the videos appears to be pretty big.
The store is
really high ceilings as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, the store has always been and will be 1,100 square feet.
Wow.
It's 2 rooms, although we sort of made it more like one large room because there was some wall that we didn't need. But so this week's YouTube and Instagram 1-minute video update is not about the sign, because that was just me sitting at my computer typing an email. This week's ad is how to make your own Hub Comics renovation update, and it is my favorite ad so far.
And that was hilarious.
Thanks.
I said I think Mark's rubbing off on you with the.
And I said Tim's
a little bit of the goofy there.
Set of goofiness is a layer above mine. He's a distinction graduating class in goof. It's very good.
I think Talking Joe fans come for the goofy.
But are you ready to talk about some comics?
Yes.
Indeed.
We're gonna talk about comics from Devil's Due. It's something you wondered if Talking Joe would ever do. I guess we'll explain it all to you. Gonna take some time to read the books we've never read.
So today we are talking Devil's Due G.I. Joe issues 6 to 9 from 2002. We've got a slightly different creative team for this arc. We have got story and layouts, Josh Blaylock as normal. Pencils are mostly Steve Kurth, that we'll remember from issues 1 to 4, with assists on issue 8 from Jamal Eigel. Inks are John Larter with Barb Schultz, Corey Hampshire, Ray Schneider, and Clayton Brown. Colors are Hi-Fi Designs. Letters are Dreamer Designs. Military consultant is SFC, which I assume is Szechuan Flavor Curry. Brian Savage Peterson. Edits Scott Whirl. And graphic design Mike Norton.
Let's have a look at the covers in the gallery.
So big news. We've got 4 covers from a famous returning G.I. Joe artist. It is Mike Zeck coming back. What a coup would be my headline. Tim?
So much to say about Mike Zeck on covers. I think it was Stephen Grant who said that Mike Zeck is the best action artist in comics. They collaborated on the 80s Punisher miniseries and also a later miniseries for, I think it was Malibu. So for a lot of people, Zeck is the quintessential G.I. Joe artist, maybe even more than a Ron Wagner or a Rod Wiggum, because his art showed up in the TV commercials. So millions of people saw it, right? Because his covers graced the book during the era of the book's highest sales, and also so many of those TV commercials. Zeck can do everything, right? He can draw tech, he can draw different facial structures, right? So the 4 green shirts on the cover to issue 7, they all have different noses and different chins and different cheekbones. It's not the fact that they're in the same pose, wearing the same costume, right? They're still different from each other. Zeck's his anatomy is flawless, and his spot blacks and his inking technique is flawless. The cover to 6 is more of a piece of design. It's less of a specific scene. And that's a little unusual for Zeck, right? When we think of Zeck covers, both for G.I. Joe and also other series, we tend to think of like someone blasting at someone else, and there's a background behind them. There's a wall, or there's some trees. Someone's threatening someone. Someone's lunging. And here, the pose is it's more like a movie poster. Cobra Commander is pointing at us, and Storm Shadow's behind us, and Storm Shadow clearly works for Cobra Commander, right? This is not some sneaking up from behind attack. I'm not always a fan of Hi-Fi's color work. This one's really pretty, but I have something to say about Storm Shadow's costume design, which I'll get to when we get inside.
Okay.
7 is a sort of uncommon G.I. Joe approach where the cover is basically all just one color. I don't mean the background, I mean everything. The entire cover is a mustard yellow, right? And certainly there's a little bit more green in it where the cloth of Beachhead's costume is, but it's basically one color, which is really striking. The cover to 8, there's so much menace. There's a quiet danger in Storm Shadow's pose and facial expression, right? With his finger on that button, clicking off the phone call that Hawk is making. And I like the urgency that the red light coming in from the right gives it. But this color does not agree with the inking, right? Look at the shadow on Hawk's eyes, right? The light is coming from the left side, but the shadow is on Hawk's right eye from the brim of his hat, right? Similarly, look at Storm Shadow's gauntlet just above the phone, right? The highlight is on the left side. The shadow is on the right side. And yet there's this bright red light off panel on the right side that's illuminating them both from the right. You can have a red light there. It shouldn't disagree with the inking so much, right? You could have a rim light. There could be a red light there. And then the cover to 9, this is one of my lesser favorite Zeck covers. It's got all the ingredients. It just sort of doesn't quite work for me. I think the coloring on Snake Eyes does some of it. I also think Snake Eyes' visor in perspective is a little low on his head. But, it's awesome to see Zeck draw Snake Eyes, to draw that Uzi. And even with this silly costume, it's great to see Zeck draw Storm Shadow. And like even the cover to issue 9, I think the Elevator and Storm Shadow look great. Snake Eyes, he doesn't belong to this scene because he's not reacting physically, to the yellow light that's behind him, and there's this weird light source in front of him that shouldn't be there because this is, I think, an elevator. Like, what is he being illuminated by? So I whipped up a very quick color sketch on top of someone's scan of Zeck's original arts to this cover to issue 9. And I like old school coloring, 4-color coloring. So in this visual version, you can make a little comparison.
Yeah, I was just thinking that last cover, issue 9, where we've got Snake Eyes in the foreground, sort of looking up, and Storm Shadow behind. It's puts me slightly in mind of that cover. I can't remember the issue number, where Snake Eyes is sort of venturing into a minefield.
63.
Okay. I think
That's
that
a
it
brilliant
is
cover.
different. But I was gonna have a look and see how close am I in imagining that there are similarities.
That one, Snake Eyes and Scarlet are full body and walking left to right, and here Snake Eyes is coming straight at us, and we're looking up at him. So quite different.
Yeah, I can see similarities, but yeah, definitely a different angle there, and he's angling his gun differently, and yeah, it's got Snake Eyes. It's the key similarity there. I think one interesting thing about seeing Zeck here versus some of those classic covers is around the technique or the approach that would have been used back in the day, and that was that a lot of those iconic covers from Zeck were based on a sketched rough cover composition from Larry Hama, whereas here for these ones for sure he's working with a bit more of a carte blanche of not having that initial inspiration as a starting point to kick him off. So it's more pure Zeck rather than interpreting a suggestion from Hammer. And I guess another thing is that you sort of touched on it around some of those iconic issues from Zeck in terms of the big G.I. Joe Marvel action covers with the likes of Roadblock firing a machine gun into the audience, or the Punisher ones, where again some quite iconic issues with Frank Castle firing towards or the audience or slightly off screen. We have heard that there was an edict from Hasbro at this time that you can't point the gun or even show it firing potentially on the front cover. So removing part of Zeck's normal armory in terms of trying to make for a dynamic action-filled scene there.
Let me throw my hat in the ring here and agree with basically everything that Tim said. Those original Marvel covers were just amazing. And I think that, along with Larry's stories, the toys, and the art, those were probably a huge selling point for the book. So many of those covers are just iconic and still amazing to look at today. The one that sticks out to me is the one with Death holding the M60 on the cover. I mean, that's so unlike any other cover in the series. And the Snake Eyes and Scarlet one that you referenced, number 63. You've got Quick Kick versus Storm Shadow, I think, on number 51. They're just an amazing run of covers.
I don't want to cast an aspersion that a professional would not do their best job. But so I don't want to say, Mike Zeck did or didn't do this. But empirically, I always wonder when an artist draws something that looks different than other things they have drawn, what are the external factors that I don't know? Did the editor not give them as much time? Did the editor over art direct them? They drew a sketch and then the editor said no, do 2 more sketches, right? And then invariably the editor picked sort of the least interesting sketch, and the artist is now not excited about drawing the cover. Again, professionals do their best, but sometimes pay isn't as good as another job, and then an artist's heart isn't in it as much. I don't know that any of these happened, but the same way that Mark points out that Zeck's not working from Hama sketches here, anyway. G.I. Joe at issue 6, 7, 8, 9 is still selling really well because it's an image book and it's got this hot launch off of issue 1. But at the same time, did they lose some fans because those first 4 issues were bi-monthly and not monthly? Did they lose some fans because the first 4 issues aren't great? Did they lose some fans because issue 5 is a sort of a momentum left turn?
Come on now, I gave that one a 7.
We should start talking about the back covers. Mark, have us talk about the back covers.
But it could have been, as you say, it could have been a tactic here. Getting someone of the caliber of Zeck on the covers could have been a way of really trying to keep that momentum of it being a bestseller. Particularly as some vocal people who enjoyed the original run maybe didn't enjoy the first few issues quite so well. Tim.
Some letter writers, maybe.
Some, outraged letter writers and so on. So could have been. Let me
not to point any fingers.
So on to the back covers. We've got another 4 from David Michael Beck. So continuing to invest in some painted covers to adorn the back of this book. We've got Storm Shadow on 6, then Beachhead, the Baroness, and Flint. Storm Shadow there being obviously a sort of as a companion piece to the Snake Eyes from issue 1, and I believe that this was also released as a print joined up with the Snake Eyes, so that they are back to back as a single image. Jay, what were your thoughts on these? Was there any that you liked or didn't like?
Wow, where to start? I just don't know for sure. I'm looking at the Storm Shadow one right now, and I think probably the problems that I might have with this have more to do with the character design than Beck's artwork. His pose is pretty good. The hands are really good. I know from being an artist myself, you look at Storm Shadow's right hand, it's very hard to get an angle like that. You kind of have to use a mirror or take a picture, but it's really hard to get that kind of angle with a hand. The hand itself looks great. The other hand looks great. Musculature and everything is pretty good. And again, his the textures on the swords and all that stuff is just fabulous. The background is great. Like I said, I'm not loving the Storm Shadow costume. I think Tim kind of hinted that he maybe is not a fan of that either. Let's see, the Beachhead cover from number 7.
Don't you think he's got like quite a weird turn to him? Just the angle of his body looks a little bit unnatural.
It looks distorted, and also the lighting doesn't help that either, because the most of the upper half of his torso is in shadow, and then you just have some light basically like on his crotch area and on the upper thigh on his left side, and that makes it look like it's even more distorted. It makes it look like he's very, very thin in the waist. The head is a little bigger than it probably should be. Honestly, after looking at Beachhead toys all week long, that's not a problem that's solely to this painting. But again, the gun looks really good. The background, I like the trees, the foliage looks great. His belt looks great. The Baroness on issue 8. I like the Baroness on number 8. I have a question. Have you guys seen the unused one?
Oh, I don't think I have.
No.
We'll include it in the video. It's basically, let me see if I can pull it up here. The background is almost completely the same, except it's slightly different. And I think that the unused one might just be a pencil sketch. Maybe this was one that he submitted and they said, no, go back to the drawing table for that one. And I think that the reason why is her face is a little harsher, but probably it's more of a sexualized pose, which I don't have a problem with. But some people do. She's got kind of her hip is thrust out a little bit more. She's got more of a, people would complain about Jim Lee and Rob Liefeld and those fellas putting ladies in unrealistic.
No, I've just called it up now. It's a much more appealing image, to be honest. Here she sort of looks quite flat, and I'm not talking about lack of buxomness. It's just very sort of plain, boring image, just sort of straight up and down. The alternative cover, she's got much more of a sort of a bend to her, sort of much more sort of interesting and a
so you like the unused one better?
Yeah, and I it could well have been. I
do too.
Could well have been that Hasbro rejected that one of saying it was too sexy with with that pose. That I know that Baroness images have been rejected before for being in inverted commas too sexy. There was a famous one from Adam Hughes.
I can't imagine any would be rejected. I've seen some incredibly sexy ones before.
Yeah, I think they'll let any old thing through now.
Yeah, the sexier the better is what seems to be their plan for Baroness. Yeah. But now back to Beck's textures. If you look at the one that was used, I've complained about his texture on clothing and different things. Like I go back to Firefly's vest on Battle Files number 2. The lighting and everything on her leather on the used cover for number 8 is really nice. I mean, he's just got some great textures there. Like her quad on her leg, I think that's what it's called. You can really see like the muscular underneath the leather, and that actually I think really works very well. But yeah, I just wondered if you guys had seen the unused one or not. Let me go real quick to number 9. This one, as Mark said, is Flint.
He's under fire, and when you've got a lead character under fire like that, with the bullets literally sort of crisscrossing, almost sort of out, giving them an outline, it kind of makes you think. Makes me think slightly less of their skills, that they've got themselves into a position where they're being crisscrossed by bullets, and it's purely by fluke that they're not being riddled.
I think there's some really big problems or perspective with this flint. I'm sure Tim's going to get into it a bit too. The gun looks pretty small, his shotgun. There's kind of a strange twist to his left leg, but again, I know from being an artist myself that that's a very hard angle to pull off. I mean, things like that, like I mentioned the beachhead that I did this week. That wouldn't have looked as good if I hadn't used photo reference of someone actually crouching behind a wall. And still, even drawn from that, you could look at that and point to problems that I had with proportion and perspective. So I'm not going to tear into that too much. It's very difficult to do that. But again, I mean, this painting plays a lot to Beck's strengths. His, the belts, the bullets, the guns, whether they're in correct proportion or not, they look good. The surfaces look good. This is the second flint we've seen him do. The other one was the paperback of the Battle Files, and I wasn't a huge fan of that.
Part of the challenge for this flint painting is that I think we see the image. I see the image, and I'm not clear if Flint is running backwards or if he's sort of sitting and like crouching and like leaning against something.
Right.
But the way that the rocks are behind him, it would have to be the former and not the latter. But I think sort of the way that his legs are posed, it's like, well, either he'd have to be sort of half sitting, crouching, or he's like stumbling and falling. I feel like this is one of those cases where the background was to some extent invented around and behind and after the photo reference or the sketch of the pose. And with Baroness, it's fine. The background, she could actually be standing in front of that staircase, or she could be standing in front of a flat wall with a poster printed on it of that staircase. It doesn't matter in either case.
Yeah, it could be anything.
But with Flint, it needs to be a little more integrated. Something that I appreciate about Beck's painting of Storm Shadow is that Storm Shadow looks Japanese. Like 2 out of 3 artists who draw G.I. Joe don't or can't draw the epicanthic fold in the eyes, right? And like this is what makes folks from Japan look different from, say, me, right? And it's a subtle thing, and I sort of always forgive the artists who draw Storm Shadow, with like Caucasian white guy eyes, because most of them do, and it's hard. I guess I feel like by now we should have all gotten over that. It's like if you're gonna draw G.I. Joe, you gotta get the Asian guys looking Asian. But
what was that word you used?
Epicanthic fold.
Okay, so this is as like when I was a kid and I was reading G.I. Joe, and I would go to a dictionary and pull it out and say, what does this word mean? Obviously I know what you mean, but yeah, that's not a term I'd ever heard before.
But again, I'll just go back to an appreciation that Blaylock shelled out for art on the back covers, right? He could have just reused some art from the inside, which is free. He could have sold the back cover as an ad. These paintings don't always entirely float my boat, but like, when are we ever going to get a painting of Beachhead? It's like, well, we'll get like a painting of Cobra Commander or Snake Eyes eventually, but you got to have a pretty long cover run, and you have to have like particular priorities to get a painting of Beachhead. And even if the painting doesn't quite work for me, it's still exciting.
Let's get on into the insides with a plot breakdown.
After being driven mad by Destro's nanites, Cobra Commander's mind has been healed thanks to the Crimson Twins, Tomax, and Zaymot. Now it is time for Reckoning. Luring the top echelon of Cobra Command together again, the commander turns Storm Shadow loose upon them. After a quick thrashing by the ninja assassin, Cobra Commander warns them to never cross him again. He then tells them to prepare for an assault on Destro's castle, while sending Storm Shadow to kill the leader of the G.I. Joe team, General Hawk. Later, near the eastern coast of the United States, a Joe team led by Shipwreck and Deep Six recover a suitcase nuke from Russian smugglers. What they don't know is they're taking home more with them than just the nuke, as Storm Shadow has stowed away beneath their vessel. In Transcarpathia, Cobra attacks Destro's castle. Destro convinces Cobra Commander it was not he who poisoned Commander with nanites, but his son Alexander. In exchange for not killing them both, Destro agrees to give Cobra Commander the technology behind his metal mask and Lillian Osborne, also known as Armada. The Joes discover the suitcase nuke they recovered was a fake, and that Storm Shadow has infiltrated their base. A chase ensues, and Storm Shadow handily beats all the Joes until coming face to face with Snake Eyes. The two ninjas battle their way through the Joes' facility until Storm Shadow disguises himself as a green shirt and escapes.
Yeah, 4 issues of action-packed adventure and intrigue. High level, what were our thoughts? I think if we start on, guess, how it felt to us as an arc, I guess for me, it felt like quite a big improvement. It seemed to flow better. There was the art for these issues were an improvement on Kurth's first 4 issues. Obviously, he's a young new artist and he's learning as he goes. There was smoother pacing. There was a natural progression of plot. Some interesting cliffhangers at the end of issues, and it just felt like a much smoother, more natural evolution and unveiling of the story rather than it being forced and lots of things coming through as exposition.
I think overall it worked better. I think a lot of that probably Blaylock and Kurth are starting to get more familiar with the characters and more comfortable as storytellers. I think a big plus is that they didn't try to cram quite so much into these issues. Like you said, it was everything just flowed better. As a story, as a 4-issue arc, it does read a lot easier than the first 4 issues. You don't have, like Tim pointed out in issue 2 or 3, I can't think of any word balloons with like 67 words in them. I didn't mind it. I thought it was pretty good. We'll get more into it, but yeah, I think it worked a lot better than the first one. The art was definitely better. I think again, the same way that Blaylock is not trying to do as much with the story and the script. It's obvious that Kurth is realizing that he doesn't need to do as much with his art. It's better to pull back a little bit. So that works a lot better.
Tim, what was your helicopter view over these 4 issues?
Familiar for established G.I. Joe fans, accessible for newer fans. Righting the ship after the first arc from the first 4 issues. A great density, lots of characters, lots of action, lots of snappy dialogue, lots of character action choreography. People moving in space, people moving down a hallway, people boarding a boat, people on a snowmobile moving. So great bang for your buck. And except for, whereas in the first arc, it was sort of every character and sort of then no one was interesting. In this one, I felt like it was a proper balance of, it's G.I. Joe. There are 500 characters. We want to see a bunch of them. And if we're going to cut between like a water mission and a snow mission and headquarters, we might see like water guys and snow guys and regular guys. So busy and dense, but not too crowded. And lots of good action. 2 or 3 little like missteps in characterization or dialogue. And then some of my normal complaints for color and lettering. But I think these are greatly helped by the Mike Zeck covers, and I think it's at issue 9 where it's after issue 9 that I stopped reading this series originally, and I suspect that if Zeck hadn't done the covers, I might not have made it through this arc. So I'm feeling, on this reread, and I haven't read it since 2002. Rereading it yesterday and this morning, there's a lot to like. I'm not grumpy.
There was a lot of action here and a lot of, I guess, in those Storm Shadow sequences, and they did do a good job of I guess telling that in a very clear way, where all the characters are, how they're interacting, and keeping it bouncing along and keeping it interesting without it it either becoming very samey or confusing. It's some good fight choreography, which isn't necessarily a particularly easy thing to do in comics.
Yeah, I got to agree with Tim. I think that the movement of the characters really is. I have to credit Blaylock a lot for that. That was one of the things that I liked about number 5 was once they got into the chase, once Duke and Major Blood got into the chase, there was a lot of action, and there were some spots that were a little unclear, with the jet skis and stuff. But it moved. I thought that it moved really well, and that was one of the reasons I gave it such a high mark. And this arc, especially when you've got all the Joes chasing Storm Shadow through the building they're in, and we'll kind of get to that. That all works really well. As far as like, okay, here's a couple panels. These guys come into the room. There's Storm Shadow right in front of us. Wham! Storm Shadow goes above us and just from behind he takes him out. And number one, that shows you what a badass Storm Shadow is. But also, I have to give Blaylock a lot of kudos for that, to write that kind of sequence, and then also the artist for being able to pull that off the way that they did. A lot better, than say the big massive battle that we saw in issue 4, which I in particular criticized for not ever pulling back and showing you the bigger picture in those scenes. Now, Tim, you mentioned that you hadn't that this was about where you dropped off, and I wanted to ask you, did you enjoy it more now? And do you think that if you weren't doing Talking Joe and you had decided, oh, maybe I'll reread these on your own, do you think that you would keep it up based on the strength of this arc or not?
To answer that second question, no. If I was rereading this without Talking Joe, I wouldn't reread it. I'd flip through it and probably a little unfairly revert to my opinion from 2002 that this was not up to snuff. But sharing a room with 2 other people,
right.
Trying to find the good in this. Also, this line sounds like a joke and an exaggeration, but it's also true. This can't hurt me anymore. It's like
I got you.
It's like the Ang Lee Hulk movie from 2003. At the time, that was a major disappointment. But since then, we've gotten other Hulk movies and
other disappointments.
And also, it's like you read some behind the scenes and you think, well, I wouldn't have made that decision, or, well, these were the limitations they were given. So there have been so many G.I. Joe comics since then, good and bad, and I'm more forgiving's too strong, but, Blaylock and his team, I feel like this is too easy. Like they were doing the best they could do. It's like, well, sometimes your best isn't good enough, but at the same time, like these are capable and these are exciting. At the time, it just didn't feel right. I think the things that weren't working were sort of like very bright blinking lights blinding me. Whereas now the things that aren't working, I think like, well, maybe in 5 issues, those will have taken care of themselves. And gosh, look at those Mike Zeck covers, or the things that Blaylock and Kurth were doing right that I just couldn't see. I was still so disappointed that Larry Hama wasn't writing this book. And I think that I was going to just hold on to that grudge indefinitely.
What about you, Mark? Do you like it? Are you enjoying it more on the reread? Because like I've said before, this is the first time I've ever read these. So I'm coming at this new. My perspective is every time I turn the page, it's the first time I've seen it. And so I'm curious how you feel. I assume that you read it in 2002 when it first came out, like Tim did.
Yeah, so my experience of it now is similar, I think, in terms of how I was experiencing it at the time. I was reading it monthly and I was enjoying it, but I did have a sense of frustration, particularly in the early issues, about the pacing, that they weren't getting that quite right, and a recognition that when they moved into this arc, that was a big turning point in terms of having a little bit more room to breathe, and that just not everything just feeling like it's crammed into too smaller space. It has been almost 20 years since I read it, so I have forgotten an awful lot of it, and it is almost like reading it for the first time with a faint recognition, remembrance in the back of my mind. So yeah, I did enjoy it, and I'm looking forward to continue to read and seeing how it progresses. But
good.
I think it is a different reading experience though as well. Sort of reading it in chunks and reading it in a more dense way in terms of reading a few issues a week kind of thing, versus one coming out every month. And there's, I guess, much more of a frustration that's possible when it's coming out monthly and you're not enjoying it, because that is the Joe book for the month, and that is the opportunity to have something that you enjoy. And if you're looking back and you think, probably it'll improve in 6 issues, whatever, as you're reading it in real time, that's half a year. It's a long time to wait for the next good issue. So I can see there being a different dynamic there between reading it in real time and being frustrated versus looking back on it and knowing that it's fine, I'll pass the time on this, and then there'll be the next issue that will come along, and maybe that one will be better.
Let's talk about that Storm Shadow costume.
Let's do it.
Armani, Prada, Versace too. Joe's changed their outfits from black to blue. Duke and Hawk, look but don't gawk. Changing their kit, whoa, is that legit? Swapping camo jackets, headgear and boots. It's now neon colours and funky spacesuits. Sci-fi stalker and even roadblocks. While Bill, Flint and Mutt gave me a shock. So go take a walk if clothes aren't your passion, because it's comic book talk and lovely G.I. Joe fashion.
Okay, I can do this in a sentence. Shoulder pads are stupid on a ninja, and unnecessary on a lot of characters. Cobra Commander, how many Cobra symbols does Storm Shadow need on his costume?
At least 6,
right? Like okay,
one on his belt too.
One on his chest, like okay, one on his head. It's like, well, that seems a little redundant. The thing about Cobra Commander, where that works, is that the one on his head and his chest are different sizes. So they sort of, in terms of design, they do different things. But these 2 stupid knee pads on Storm Shadow are so stupid. Like, and you can counter, right? Like, well, Tim, like Cobra is flamboyant. Destro is this 70s Bond villain. He's got an open shirt, jacket with this giant collar thing.
I'd love to see Destro in a James Bond film.
And Dr. Mindbender just walks around with no shirt and a giant cape and
codpiece.
Yes. and Tomax and Zaymot are like circus performers. Yeah, like they're like acrobats, and we don't see it anymore. It's like when someone makes that joke that like some of the like G.I. Joe characters look like the Village People, because of Shipwreck. Like I just frown. It's like, no, you don't understand. And it's like, no, Tim, you don't understand. The rest of the world looks at these guys and sees such a variety that it's like a little silly and distracting. And like, I think the villains should be flamboyant. Like Serpentor, like what an amazing design. All these, this snake motif as a kid. It's like, is he a snake man or is he wearing snake clothes? But the elegance of the simplicity of the 82 and 83 and 84 lineup, right? Like you cannot do better than the original Ron Rudat Storm Shadow design, and you can't do much better than the first 3 Snake Eyes designs. And it's like once Storm Shadow has these like ribbing on his knees, sort of in the mouth of the Cobra, and like the ribbing on his on the underside of his gauntlets. I'm looking at the cover to 6 and the cover to 9. It's like at a certain point, it's like, Batman gauntlets for punching. It's armor, but like, no, he's a ninja. Like he doesn't need armor because he's not going to get shot. He's a martial artist. He can take you down just wearing a cotton shirt, jacket, and cotton pants. And so like once he's wearing like boots with all these straps, it's too much. And
it's over designed.
Those knee pads should come in handy though for all of that scrambling around in the air ducts.
And something that you mentioned, Tim, how many Cobras does he need on his outfits? You see this a lot too on the Baroness's outfit. Now I'm looking at the classified figure of the Baroness right now, and she's got, this is not too much, I don't feel like. She's got a Cobra symbol on her belt buckle, she's got a Cobra on her chest, and then she's got little Cobras on each of her gauntlets. And that's it. But I've seen drawings of Baroness before where she's got huge Cobras on each gauntlet. She's got a gauntlet on her chest. She's got gauntlets on her belt. She's got cobras on her knee pads like Storm Shadow does here. And when you start throwing those on there too much, you're just like, okay, we get it. That's your team. We don't need Chicago Bears don't have, I don't know what it is, the C on every surface that's capable of putting one on there.
Yeah, it's the Baroness is the same on the Beck cover. I can see she's got one on her front, one on her on her.
Does she have
back
them
of
on
her
her hands?
hands?
Let me go back to it.
Yeah, the one on her hand, on the
But
back of her hands, on her
this
belt,
kind of
big silver ones on her knees as well.
this kind of over design, this is,
Yeah, I see that.
some of this is because toy sculpting can carry more detail in 2002, 2003 than it could in 82 and 86. Some of it is that this is just sort of the flavor of the country, right? Like when I was a kid,
that time it was
Knee pad flavor.
well, I mean, we see it in a lot of eras and in a lot of media, right? So when in the Marvel movies, it's like the Marvel. I'm gonna cast some aspersion here and use a strong word. It's as if the concept designers and costume designers for the Marvel movies are scared of leaving a few inches of cloth or material blank or empty, right? Like think of Captain America's movie costume. Like he's got these little like gaps between where the star on his chest meets the blue and then the red and white stripes along his six-pack. It's like they can't just be vertical stripes like the flag. They have to be these like weird segmented things and then all these like stitching. It's like, well, there's sort of like he's wearing sort of a jacket, right? But it's as if it's made out of armor plating because there's like a seam and a stitch and a seam and a stitch and a seam and a stitch. And like the original Fantastic Four costumes in the comics in 1961.
Simple, perfect.
Like they're just wearing blue shirts and blue pants, and one of them doesn't burn when it's on fire, and one of them can stretch. And so there is some science and like magic to it. But, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And design is its own category that's completely different from like writing or drawing, like visual storytelling. But design gets pulled into comics, and so some of these costumes have too much going on.
It almost feels like the designers are getting paid by the line.
I wonder how much of a debt Cobra Commander and Storm Shadow's shoulder pads owe to Rob Liefeld and Cable.
It is an image book.
It's one of the striking things about Storm Shadow in particular is that it's actually not a toy design. This one, it's at least I don't think it was informed by anything that Hasbro was doing. There was some similar looks, but not quite the same as this. There was a 12-inch version of Storm Shadow that had some similar design elements, but I don't think that there's ever been a toy quite capturing this particular look. So I think this was comics originated.
I'll say something nice or neutral. Clutch shows up in this run, and I noticed this when we were looking through battle files in a previous episode. The Clutch costume, to me, recalls his Mega Marines outfit, because he's got this cap and he's got no facial hair, and he's Mega Marines, it's armor and it's bright neon orange, and in the Devil's Due run it's sort of a beige mustard. But if you squinted, and this might just be coincidence, right? So maybe it's like, how do we get someone who's not in green? Because Gung Ho's green, and Flint's got some green, and Beachhead's green, and the original Clutch has tan. But I can't help but see, I think inadvertently, a simplification of the Mega Marines Clutch in this Devil's Due Clutch.
Yeah, it makes sense from a sort of like a character perspective that Clutch would have that kind of loose cap, hanging around the motor pool, working on racing cars, that kind of thing. It seems logical, and it's sort of a continuation almost through that tan look. I think the Mega Marines thing, might be there, but probably mostly in your head.
You know what I like about this Clutch? 2 words.
Oh, his sideburns?
Mutton chops.
He's complimented on them as well. They were nice chops or whatever. Yeah. And another new look that I noticed in these issues was for wetsuits, which, unlike a couple of the ones we've mentioned, is specific to a toy. So this was based on the new wetsuit figure that was being released and using the Hasbro design. And it would make sense that it's kind of external to the book because it does look a bit awkward and out of place. It's a bit crazy looking. He's got kind of these pistons on his elbows and quite bright sort of colours. Not really a look that I'm particularly fond of, and I would imagine not probably a look that they would have landed on independently to that figure.
Don't forget, Wetsuit is a Navy SEAL. When he shows up in issue 7, I have two problems with this page.
Here come the Nit-Picker, Timmy Finn, and a little cool prankster, Timmy Finn, picking holes in your colouring, Timmy Finn, still love G.I. Joe, Timmy Finn. No, he won't lie. Yes, he testify. Anyone can see there's some criticism. Anything that he don't know ain't a thing that's worth to know. Pull him back and let him go. Criticism. Here come the Nit-Picker, Timmy Finn, analytical prankster, Timmy Finn, picking holes in your colouring, Timmy Finn, still love G.I. Joe, Timmy Finn.
I have two problems with this page. One, I thought it was Deep Six because it's such a big, clunky costume. And two...
Sploosh? No.
Yeah, I appreciate that Kurth is hand lettering when he's penciling. I think pencilers can and should do that. I think he overdoes it. I think some of his hand lettering when he's doing sound effects for like kicks and machine guns and things bumping into walls in this whole arc, I think they're a little too like big, and then they get cropped behind someone and then there's a word balloon. I don't mind that they're like bright yellow because it's like, no, this is a comic book. Comic books can have sound effects, and like that's just part of the visual language of comics. My problem here with Sploosh is that we read the first panel on the top left. We read the second panel where he pushes someone overboard. And then I think we're supposed to go down and read Sploosh as the third panel. But comics are left to right, top to bottom. And so I read this like 1, 2, 4, 3, where his line happens first. That's right, Snakes. Wetsuit is back in action. And then like 30 seconds later, when he's finished this talking to himself dialogue, the guy actually hits the water, Sploosh. And but
it's a tall ship.
but Blaylock gets. I agree with Jay from an earlier point. Blaylock gets a lot of credit for clear storytelling with his layouts, good visual action, cramming a lot. These pages have many of them have 9, 10, 11, 12 panels, but the Sploosh doesn't quite work.
You mentioned the number of panels. It really doesn't. It doesn't stand out as bad in this arc as it did in Reinstated. And like you just said, his storytelling's gotten better, and I think probably his layouts and Kurth's work has, because I didn't even think about until you said it just now that many of these pages have 10 or 12 panels.
The too much story, too much dialogue or narration, too many panels per page, it didn't become a problem until the second to last page of the entire arc, where there is too much story and character wrap up. Like there's actually 2 pages worth of material crammed into the second to last page, right? Which is like the epilogue of the main story. And then the final page is a tease for the next story. There's also, I think it's in part 2 or part 3. There's a bit where they're fighting Storm Shadow in a hallway, and like the blast doors start to close, and it's the tiniest panel where the doors start to close, and someone's like, the doors are closing, and then there are 3 great panels of Storm Shadow jumping through the doors and not getting sealed off. But that first panel of him realizing it's happening, that dialogue, when someone needs to say what's happening aloud, because you can't tell from reading it, then you either haven't given yourself enough space to draw it, or you haven't drawn it well. So there are two small missteps here for me in terms of the visual storytelling, but overall, quite successful.
I thought that one of the missteps for me was probably just the flashback to the wetsuit sequence. It just seemed a bit of an unnecessary flashback, and in terms of the way they framed it, it didn't have a clear end point either. In terms of it moves from that wetsuit scene, which is a flashback, to then the beachhead scene where he's training some of the green shirts, which also seems to be a flashback, and then back into the plot, which is in the present day, and it didn't have anything that kind of indicated that where we were in terms of the timing. But I guess it wasn't bad enough that it caused any degree of confusion. So relatively trivial stuff. Any other call outs for our talking points?
Number 7, we've got another scene with, new Joes that are, in the gym at Wright-Patterson, and they're, kind of fooling around PT, and then, Beachhead comes in and basically is like, all right, idiots, daddy's home. I don't know. I wonder how many of these we're going to get. They haven't done enough with any of the new characters, like we said before, to make you care about them. So, I mean, they could do 100 scenes like this and it wouldn't matter, as long as none of these guys mean anything. And every scene that they're in like this, it's just the same thing. Two guys facing off each other. Oh, I'm better than you. I'm better than you. Why? Prove it. Prove it in the field. Show us what you can do when you're, scaling a mountain or in a ship, like at the beginning of this issue. Somebody could have stood out there.
Part of the challenge is with these green shirt scenes is that they're all wearing the same costume, or if they're playing basketball, they're all wearing like the same white tank tops and like green pants. So like none of them is differentiating themselves, and they don't have cool code names. They just have their last names. And if in the first arc one of them had distinguished themselves and then like become a Joe and like gotten a costume and a code name, for issue 6, I mean that'd be too much. It's too much going on. But yes, I'm still waiting for one of them to differentiate themselves. Mark, you were going to say?
I was just going to say that Jay touched on the fact that they were in this new base, so they do make a little bit of a point of being in this new base with the sort of the location that's accessible by sea, being a decommissioned naval base. And yeah, we're seeing the Joes in a new context outside of the pit, having their own, I guess, living quarters as well, which are a bit fancier now, and some shenanigans with the jugglers as well, as he's trying to allow to get the Joe budget that he wants, and being given a storytelling constraint, which is that he doesn't have an unlimited supply of Joes, that he's got his core team available with maybe some specialists on call, but not the huge team with everyone coming back that maybe was initially hinted at.
The Joes are actually in 2 separate locations, and this is something that I kind of had to double check when I was doing the plot breakdown. Beachhead and several of the other characters are initially in Wright-Patterson, which is in Dayton, Ohio. And this might be a continuity error now that I think about it. And because Hawk and those characters, Deep Six and Shipwreck, they are in a decommissioned naval base in Philadelphia, I think it said. Yeah, and like I said, that may have been a mistake now that I think about it, because isn't Beachhead in that scene at the end where everybody's getting beat down by Storm Shadow?
Yeah, he is. And
he shouldn't be, because he should be in Dayton, Ohio.
Is there time for him to get from one to the other? Is that sort of between the issues?
Maybe. It could be. No prize, anyone? Mark, come up with something.
So I've got an idea as to what's actually happening with Beachhead's location. There's actually a sequence where Hawk is arriving at the Philadelphia Naval Base, and alongside him is Kamakura, Flint, and Beachhead, who appear to be arriving at the same time. And Beachhead says, I I had no idea the Philadelphia Naval Base was still active in this area. So he's
My bad.
effectively arriving for the first time at this new location. And when we saw him before, I think it was a continuation of the wetsuit flashback. So when he was at the other location, it was a little bit earlier in terms of the timing of it. So he would have had time enough to get across, meet up with Hawk, and get to the new location. There we go. Job done.
Good job,
Good
Mark.
Thank you.
I feel like I should have caught that.
Can I point out 2 character bits that didn't work for me?
Okay, go on.
Yeah.
In issue 6, the first chapter of the story, Scarlet and Snake Eyes return to her home in Georgia. Where her brothers are. And she's going to sort of reintroduce Snake Eyes to her family now that they're engaged again. And she says, "You're not exactly on my brother's list of favorite people ever since the breakup," right? That's fine. Turn the page. She says, "God, look at me, a tough as nails member of the world's best task force. But get me around family and I'm a little girl again." I understand that when you're visiting your family, you can sort of revert. Certainly you can be nervous if you're bringing your non-speaking, like, deadly ninja boyfriend back to your family after he jilted you. But this just sort of reminds me of this bit in Reinstated where Scarlet smacks someone and Baroness smacks someone, and it's only the women who are smacking men that they're angry at. And I feel like this is a little bit too much of a character being vulnerable,
Stereotyped.
but she's a woman. And like, there's no scene with any of the men. Like, we see Stalker with his family, and we see Flint and Lady J, I think, are together now in this 7 years later. And there's none of the guys are like nervous about, their sort of life after. So that's one. And then the other is later in the arc when there's this face-off in the Joe base and Storm Shadow gets away. He takes 2 green shirts hostage for a moment, and he backs up into an elevator, and he slashes his sword against Snake Eyes' head, and it nicks his face and cuts his visor a little bit. And then some great sound effects. Spatosh, ding, and bracka, bracka, bracka. But so Kamakura gets pushed out of the way, and Snake Eyes is sort of stunned for a moment because he's been bested, and the elevator door closes and Storm Shadow gets away, and Kamakura says, "Master, your face, are you okay?" And there's 3 silent panels as we zoom in sort of past Snake Eyes' now transparent visor to see his eye, or maybe it's a reflection, I can't tell. And then there's a big panel on the next page where Snake Eyes thrusts his arm out and with his Uzi and fires right at the closed elevator door that's like 3 feet in front of him. Bracka, 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 bracka. "Master, no! Snap out of it, Snake Eyes. That's an order. You might hit our men." Whoa, whoa, whoa. Snake Eyes always keeps his cool. This should not happen.
Yeah, you kind of lost it for a minute.
Like, this is that kind of thing where, like, you write out this idea, like, oh man, Snake Eyes is gonna get embarrassed by Storm Shadow in front of his apprentice or the other Joes, or he's gonna be defeated by Storm Shadow and not be able to keep him from escaping, or he's gonna get slashed in the face, and that's gonna bring back all sorts of memories. Like, no, what Snake Eyes does is they're like, "Snake Eyes, are you okay?" Snake Eyes has already dropped his stuff and like jumped up an air conditioning shaft and is going after Storm Shadow. He doesn't like have a rage moment. That's not Snake Eyes.
You know what I thought when this happened was that wasn't Snake Eyes. I thought that was Billy. Because like you said, Snake Eyes was in Georgia with Scarlet the last time we saw him. And then, Storm Shadow's kicking everybody's ass in this Joe base, and he comes around the corner and there's Snake Eyes. And I'm like, Snake Eyes isn't there. And then I thought, oh, I'll bet you that's Billy, because we had just seen Billy in like one of the earlier parts in the story talking to Flint. And then when this specific scene happens and Snake Eyes loses it, I thought, just like you, I'm like, that's Snake Eyes isn't going to do that. But I could see Billy losing it, especially after they're talking in the Reinstated arc, and Flint is kind of alluding to Billy possibly having emotional issues, which he would. Yeah, I totally thought this was Billy, and clear up until the end, I kept waiting for the reveal when they were going to say that this was Billy in the Snake Eyes outfit.
That's a good point. That's a good point. But instead, they say, like, no, Snake Eyes got here really fast because
Yeah.
which is also a Snake Eyes thing to do. It's like you do have that reveal where it's like, oh, we're stuck. It's like, well, Snake Eyes is here. Like, I thought he was in Antarctica. Like, no. Off panel 2 issues ago, he started coming back.
Yeah, and I guess the plot twist is that nobody told Snake Eyes to come back, so it could only have been Storm Shadow that gave him the tip off. So,
Is that what
they're
it was?
to?
I had a hard time figuring out what the illusion was.
Yeah, I didn't get it either.
I thought that I will admit I read the second half of the final issue a little faster, but I thought maybe it was something like
it's that second to last page that they say that it's a good thing you contacted Snake Eyes. That's just it. I didn't. Then who? Who else knew details of the mission? Yada yada yada, and then it just flicks to Storm Shadow, sort of, and specifically his tattoo. Who else called him? Who else knew Storm Shadow would be on the base? You didn't even know that. I'm looking into it, but so far I haven't got a clue. And the Arashikage hexagram is the panel, hinting, connection. It's him. Whoever it was, I'm glad he did. It seemed pretty clear that that's what they are.
So I appreciate you clearing that up for me, and I would like to think if I wasn't slightly rushing through the second half of this final issue, I could have gotten it. Where I think the reason I think I didn't quite get it is that this is that page where there's too much happening. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 panels on a page, which is amazing. But in this case, it's too much. The first half is about Hawk talking to, I think, Duke, and then it sort of flashes to Scarlet and Snake Eyes, and it's really hard to tell. I think it's like back in Georgia and her brother. And there's this panel in the middle of the page where I think it's her brother, but it's really hard to tell, reaches out his hand, and then to someone, it's hard to tell, and then 2 hands are shaking. But if that latter panel of the 2 hands shaking is a moment later, the camera has broken, to use a film term, the 180-degree rule, because the brother's on the left and Snake Eyes is on the right, and then in the next panel, Snake Eyes' hand is shaking from the left and the brother's hand is shaking from the right. And I think that's because there needs to be this visual rhyming so that 2 panels later, when we see another arm with the tattoo on it, and I guess it's Storm Shadow's, it's the same composition, it's the same framing on a different arm. But then as we pull back from Storm Shadow, it's Storm Shadow, and he's practicing his sword in front of a giant Cobra banner. I don't know where he is or what he's doing or why he's there, but as the final panel is him continuing to practice his sword, but it looks like he's under armed guard from a Viper or a Neo Viper, a Cobra soldier. And I think that's just sort of to create some visual interest. It's we're in Cobra headquarters, there's a giant banner, there's some Cobra guys around, but it's wait, is he in trouble with Cobra Commander and he's a prisoner, or do they not trust him because he's been zapped by the brainwave scanner at the end of the previous run? There's just way too much happening on this page, and I couldn't follow it, and so I got confused.
Okay.
I think, like you said, because there is so much on there, and the panels are so small, and they're trying to cram so much in that one page. In a way, it almost does make you want to try to rush to get to the end. I mean, it's like getting through something that's unpleasant, as quickly as you can. All the rest of the book has been good up until this point, and then you called it dead on earlier. The second to the last page just has too much stuff on it, and you get to that page and you're like, all right, let me get through this. So yeah, I missed it too, completely missed it. Now that I see it, it's obvious.
What this needs is the previous page is a big, exciting splash of Storm Shadow getting away on a Joe motorcycle. That original artwork would sell for more money than a page with 12 panels or 6 panels of shoulders and heads and hands and people talking. So the previous page needs to have a half splash of Storm Shadow getting away. And then the Duke Hawk conversation starts on the bottom half of the previous page. And then as we flash to Georgia and this family reunion picks up again, and then we cut over to Cobra Base and Storm Shadow's doing his sword thing, that has just more space, more like taller and wider panels so that I can just see what's going on.
Okay.
Should we talk for a minute about Jamal Igle?
So yeah, it was in issue 8, wasn't it, that there was some art assists from Jamal Igle, and I think it was done quite effectively because neither me or Jay actually noticed the change in artist until you actually reminded us that he also had the art creds for that issue. What were your thoughts on him joining in on the issue?
Kurth draws the first 5 pages, and then Igle picks up the scene with Tripwire showing up to pick up the suitcase nuke. He draws, that's 2 pages. He draws the next scene where, just as you referred to, Hawk and the 3 other Joes arrive in Philly. Sorry, he does that 1 page, then it's back to Kurth. Igle does the page which starts in the Arctic. He does all 3 pages of the Arctic scene, and then the next 3 pages, Hawk talking. Look at the acting. The page it's on the right side, halfway through the book, where Shipwreck has his arms out and he's saying, "That's just great. Snake Eyes sure picked a great time to leave." Look at the 3 panels above. There's a silent panel of 2 green shirts turning with their ears towards a closed door to try and hear the briefing that's happening in Hawk's office.
The third panel's nice.
And there's a Metal Gear Solid exclamation mark above them because they've heard a noise. Ring. You know,
Kurth's faces are wider. His eyes are set further apart because he's doing this Brian Hitch thing. Igle's his influence is coming from somewhere else. Look at the on the next page, right, when Shipwreck has his index finger and his thumb up at his chin and he's turning. So what? We're supposed to just go out there and look for a ninja to shoot? Look at that great expression. So they split the rest of the issue. That final splash page is Kurth, the final, but I think the second to last page is Igle. So Jamal Igle, he's best known in the last 20, 30 years in comics. He had a run on Supergirl, and he had a run on Firestorm, both at DC. He's bounced around on a lot of fill-in issues, like specials or one-shots. More recently, he's drawn a creator-owned book called Molly Danger. He's an artist he's someone who's been done a lot of stuff at DC and a little bit of Marvel, I guess. Yeah, a little bit of Marvel. I've always wanted him to do a full issue or arc on G.I. Joe, but sort of the regular G.I. Joe, right? A Larry Hama G.I. Joe. I feel like his work is in that perfect sweet spot of there's just a little bit of animation in his faces and his expressions. His poses are energetic. He's not exaggerating anything sort of to ill effect, but he can do, costumes and tech. His storytelling's great. He just draws really well. And then most recently, he did a miniseries for Black Mask Studios in the Black AF world, I think, when it was originally just called Black before they retitled it. That's about a world where superheroes are only African Americans in America. So he's going to come back for issue 10, right?
Yeah, gets a whole issue.
Yeah, his work is great. I feel like when he's done superhero stuff, there's a little bit of exaggeration and a little bit of flair that I don't see. And I think as much superhero material as he's done, I actually think when his work is a little bit grounded, right? Like he did an Iron Fist and Wolverine miniseries right around this time, I think just before this Devil's Due work. I think his stuff is a little better suited to sort of street level, ground level.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you guys pointed out that he filled in on this. And just let me make a comment about his art. And there's a couple panels I want to point out in particular. He does, and I hadn't noticed this when I was reading it, but his figure work is very good. and his movement of figures a lot. It makes me think of when I first discovered Duncan Fegredo's artwork was in a book called The Face. It was a Vertigo book written by Peter Milligan, and there was one panel in that book that just stopped me dead in my tracks, and because it looked so natural. There was a girl in a library, and she was bent over looking on one of the shelves, and you were kind of seeing it not exactly from a worm's eye or bird's eye view, but she had her hair pulled back, and it just was like a completely natural pose. And I thought, wow, that's really hard to do something like that. And I see Eigel does things like that too. If you go to page but where they first get to the base in Philadelphia, the bottom panel on the left bottom panel, where you have Shipwreck and Deep, I guess it's Wetsuit, are walking away from the shark. Check out Wetsuit's pose. I mean, that's perfect. The perspective is perfect, and it's just so natural. I mean, you don't even, it's one of those things that's like lettering when we talked about it. When it's bad, it stands out. When it's good, you're not even supposed to notice it. And that's the way that his figure work is right there. That's a really hard pose to get. And then just, movement, like on the next page where Clutch is crouching down. He's looking at something. He's got his arms in front of him. And in the very next panel, you see Clutch from below, a worm's eye perspective. And that shot right there where you're looking up at someone's face is incredibly difficult to do as an artist. So yeah, I'm with you. I'd like to see much more of Eigel's work on this, and definitely probably try to track some more stuff down that he's done. This is really the only thing that I've ever seen that he's worked on.
Great. Shall we move on to the little Easter eggs that we spot in I Spy?
I spy with my little eye.
The only thing that I really would point out for I Spy, which is not, a G.I. Joe I Spy necessarily, is in issue 6 when they're helping Stalker move into his house and they get some of the stuff, they get some furniture moved in. Stalker throws Roadblock a can of something that looks suspiciously like a can of Budweiser. And that's when Roadblock says something like, "Oh, I wonder if they'll have Yo-Joe Cola." And I'm like, you just caught a Budweiser. I don't think that you're going to be interested in Yo-Joe Cola. But I think this is probably the first time that we've seen, like the throwing up on your aunt at a party line from the first, from the reinstated arc. This is probably the first appearance of an alcoholic beverage. Well, no, maybe not. I guess Baroness was drinking champagne all through that arc too.
No, red wine out of a champagne fruit.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we didn't see much of before.
Doesn't presumably isn't someone's drinking alcohol in that Mike Zeck story in yearbook 3 or yearbook 4? My dinner with Serpentor. Surely someone's drinking alcohol there. Serpentor is not going to drink like grape. Although wait, no, I haven't. Aren't the Dreadnoks serving dinner? So it probably is grape soda. Never mind.
I think you might be right there. I just dug out the yearbook, and the Dreadnoks are indeed serving up chocolate-covered donuts and grape soda. And Dr. Mindbender declares at the time, "Chocolate-covered donuts and grape soda. This is an imperial feast. You dare serve this garbage to serpenters? Where are the chefs and kitchen vipers? I'll have them filleted and garnished."
Kitchen vipers.
Oh, lovely stuff. Something I noticed here was in issue 6, we had an advert for the Transformers. It says, "See the Transformers, new series from Dreamwave Productions," with a logo down in the bottom for Hasbro Consumer Products, copyright 2002 Hasbro. So this is strange. It looks like it's a Hasbro commissioned advert, potentially, for the Dreamwave Productions comic of Transformers, but drawn by, I believe, Steve Girth.
Yeah, his signature is next to Roadblock's mouth.
Yeah, that sort of stylized triangle. Drawn by Steve Girth with G.I. Joe characters, but advertising a Rivals book, and this is before the Transformers versus G.I. Joe miniseries that came out not too long afterwards.
I assumed at the time, this was that drawing when we talked about the first arc, and I was saying Kurth wasn't good enough, but there was one drawing where he was getting better. This was the drawing to which I was referring.
And looking very Brian Hitch there in places, particularly in Roadblock's expression.
At the time, I don't know, had a crossover already been teased? I mean, it hadn't been announced, but at the time I thought, like, okay, you've got these two different publishers, these two different studios sharing these Hasbro, one has one brand and one has the other. Like, surely they're going to talk to each other, or they're seeing each other at conventions. I sort of took it not that Hasbro commissioned this ad, because I feel like Hasbro was sort of less involved in the comics, and more like this is Blaylock talking with Pat Lee. Like, oh, you want to do something together? Like, oh, it'd be fun to draw your robots. Like, oh, can we do a pinup? Like, oh, well, and then it sort of becomes an ad. But I think, was this released as a poster?
It may well have done.
I feel like this is sort of less about synergy and more about like sort of friendly,
Having
like
fun with it.
convention.
Yeah. The second I spotted was just having Scarlet's brothers in there, which is a callback to Scarlet's file card, and also I believe the cartoon as well. In the file card, it says that Scarlet's father and three brothers were martial arts instructors, but I don't believe they were ever seen in the comic. We just saw the sister who tried to turn off her life support machine, as Jay will remember.
Yeah, and that one brother's as big as a tank. He's a big old boy.
So there was a story on the cartoon that sort of lent quite heavily into Scarlet's family. Wasn't there an episode, Tim?
Yeah, Joe family members get kidnapped in Captives of Cobra from
of course,
1985, season 1.
I think that was one that we even got over in the UK on a VHS release. Full force. But more important than the little nuggets of joy in the Easter eggs, we also love spotting little nuggets of festering, mouldering problems in Error Detected.
Error detected. Error detected. No prize incoming.
On the cover to issue 8, drawn by Mike Zeck, there is a telephone, and it only has 9 buttons on it. But phones have 9 buttons, and then also a third row for star, 0, and pound. But this is, one of those like red Pentagon telephones, so it's not a standard issue telephone.
Very good.
You know what my line is? Those other 3 buttons are still in the pencil.
I approve of that joke.
Good.
I thought you might have had the same one as me, but not. The one that I noticed was that we had a mamba landing on the roof of the Silent Castle. But as we all know, there are no flat surface areas where conventional helicopters can land. Asterisk, editor's note, issue 120.
Wow, very good, very good.
Let's no prize it. We're a few years on from the events of that issue, and Destro has renovated his castle and taken a side step away from Cobra, and felt that he would no longer need those same defense needs as he once had, and possibly having an accessible helicopter landing point was more convenient than having a fully defensible, impenetrable castle.
Also, in issue, is it 137 or 138, the Silent Castle transforms. It like reconfigures like a transformer.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe when it's half transformed, there is a horizontal surface for a mamba.
Could be, yeah.
Can I throw a nitpick in here?
Go on.
Why do we call it the Silent Castle?
Well, have you ever heard it speak?
I mean, I understand because it first appeared in the silent issue, but nobody's gonna call it a silent castle. That seems to me to be one of just the dumbest things. This is Destro's silent castle. Okay, nobody talks. We're gonna put subtitles between like an old silent movie.
But his other castle was in Scotland, and that was full of Scottish people, and they are very loud.
They're gonna talk.
Very, very loud castle.
It's Transcarpathia just doesn't allow talking in their castle.
No talking there.
That's Jay's nitpick.
Okay. Let's go with Yo-Joage, shall we? Our score out of 10. So we were both came in quite low, me and Tim, on the last issue. G.I.J. was in with a high 7. How are we going to fare with this? Jay, we left you to last time. You go in first. You're going in strong.
Oh, wow. Now that I have to think about it, I guess, geez, I really kind of screwed myself with that first one, didn't I? Because now it has to be, well, did I enjoy it more than the first one, which I gave a 6.5? I gave number 5 7. So I guess we'll continue this one with a number 7, unless we're at some point going to maybe say, let's edit these and I might move everything back 1 point. But yeah, I liked it more than Reinstated. Probably liked it about the same as the last one. So it's getting better. I mean, if they get an 8 out of me, they'll be doing a good job. But right now I'm going to stick with the 7.
Yeah, I enjoyed this. It felt like quite a breezy read. Yeah, fun to be had. I think I will go in with a 7. Yeah, not touching the high peaks into the 7.5 upwards scale yet. So there's room for improvement, but yeah, I definitely enjoyed it still, and not a regrettable read, and would quite happily go back and reread this one.
I give this a 6. On a bad day, I would give this a 5, but I'll give this a 6. It's greatly elevated by the covers. Everyone's getting better. Blaylock gets a lot of credit for cramming in a lot, but also, except for that second to last page, not cramming in too much. Some of this is not fixing the mistakes of the first arc, but one of the things I don't like about the first arc is Alexander. And here we get to see Alexander punished. And that's external. That's me reacting as a fan, not as a critic, because that's not me saying like this is a good writer choice or a bad writer choice. This is me saying, yeah, that thing that I don't like, it's getting minimized.
And also Armada was handed over to Cobra Commander.
I was just going
to
mention that.
And that was a bit, I don't know, it was a bit of a strange scene. I wasn't too sure how to take that.
What do we think Cobra Commander's going to do?
Yeah, he says...
Well, what did we think she was doing with these two women in the first place, right? Like, were they prostitutes? Like, that was an issue we had in that arc where we don't really see Joe characters, trying to like really date or anything sort of spicier than, kissing, Baroness and Destro kiss, or Flint and Lady J don't kiss.
Yeah.
Yeah, this I thought sort of as a villain parlaying with a villain, it worked. It's like, oh, I'm also going to give you this other woman, this other person, that woman you'll remember from that night. But in terms of G.I. Joe, it felt a little off, a little harsh.
Yeah, your offer has suddenly become quite enticing. Yeah, I'm not too sure what he has in mind for her, but I guess.
Is he just going to torture her, or
something else?
Is Cobra engaged in sex trafficking now? We don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of the setting it up as you may remember her from your chambers the night you were seized by Alexander. Candy. Yeah, sort of. I don't know.
I wonder if we'll see her again.
Yeah.
Let's me
find
and Tim
out.
don't know. Yeah. Well,
I would have known
we do.
at some point. I've forgotten entirely. So
all right, Chief.
I'm gonna be surprised. Okay, with all the comics talked about, have we got some toys to talk about, Jay?
Yes, we do.
Jay is here with a toy no fear, talking G.I. Joe collectibles. It's a favorite figure, let's pull the trigger, 3 3/4 inch or bigger. J, 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 J.
Okay, as I alluded to earlier, what I want to talk about today is Beachhead. Now, I had thought about doing Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow since they do play such a big part in the second story arc, but I think that's probably a bigger discussion for another day. So yeah, I decided with Beachhead, since he does feature on the cover of, what was that, number 6 or 7 maybe. Beachhead's first appearance in the Marvel Comics series G.I. Joe Real American Hero was issue number 47 from May of 1986. Now that was right after Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow ventured to Cobra Island to kill Zartan. Zartan escaped, and Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow were fleeing the island on a Cobra hydrofoil. Pursuing Cobras blew up the hydrofoil, causing Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow to plunge into the ocean. And as Snake Eyes and 2 Cobra eels fought off a frenzy of sharks, Wetsuit, Hawk, and Beachhead pulled Snake Eyes to safety. Now, Beachhead's real name is Wayne R. Sneeden. His birthplace was Auburn, Alabama. Primary military specialty was infantry. Secondary military specialty is small arms armor, and grade is E6, which I believe is a sergeant. Now, from the original 1986 file card, Beachhead was a lane instructor at the Ranger School in Fort Benning and an observer/advisor at the Covert Ops School in Central America. He's meticulous, patient, and strong-willed. He likes getting up at 0600 hours to take a 10-mile run and PT session before breakfast. He enjoys squatting motionless beside a jungle trail for 3 days straight, waiting to ambush bad guys that might never show up. What he hates is people who aren't interested in doing their best. Qualified expert, all NATO and Warsaw packed small arms. There's a quote says, "Most folks will get mad on occasion or at least irritable, not Beachhead. He thinks anger is a waste of time and energy. Rage clouds the vision and pollutes logic. Fury impairs judgment and makes you careless. The results of anger are totally unacceptable to Beachhead. He doesn't get angry, he gets even." Almost sounded like a Jedi for a second there, except for that even part. Now, since his original release in 1986, I think Beachhead has proven to be one of the most popular characters from the entire franchise. From 86 to 2014, there were 17 different versions of the character made in a 3 3/4 scale. Some of them were incredibly detailed and faithful to the original design of the character. I would say at least 6 of them were horrific mockeries that should never be spoken of, looked at, or purchased by anyone ever again. Now, from what I was able to determine, there were at least 4 different 12-inch figures of Beachhead, including 2 pretty terrible ones from Hasbro, one all right one from Hasbro, and an amazing one from Sideshow Collectibles, which I'm not sure what it went for when it was originally released, but that's one that probably if I had been into the hobby at that time, I might have had to pick up because it's really spectacular. Now, as always, for the purposes of this retrospective, I want to look at the original Beachhead from 1986 and the Cobra Island Target exclusive Beachhead from the newly released Classified line. The original Beachhead wore a green shirt and balaclava, a black vest, and what I always thought were extra magazines for his submachine gun on the front of his vest.
Yeah.
And camo pants. He has 2 sheathed knives molded onto his right leg and a holstered pistol molded onto the left leg, and I think it's explosives down by his boot. Now, his red Ranger beret is molded onto the vest of his left shoulder, and I have to admit, as a kid, I had no idea that was a beret. I don't know what I thought it was, or if I even gave it much thought. He came with a fairly large black backpack that had a sculpted crossbow on it, which I thought was kind of cool. And on the side of the backpack, I thought it was a grappling hook, but I've since seen it referred to as a mine sensor. I kind of like my idea better. He had a light gray 9mm submachine gun, which I always thought was flimsy. So I used the submachine gun that came with Hit and Run with him instead because it was awesome. He had a black ammunition satchel, which I always thought was full of explosives. Apparently, I wasn't very bright as a kid because I got all this stuff wrong. Now, the classified Beachhead, which was released in 2020, is very similar in appearance to the 1986 version. There are some subtle differences. He still has a green shirt and balaclava, though it's a much lighter shade of green than the original, which was more of an olive drab color. He still has the black vest like the original, but it doesn't have the extra magazines on it this time. And instead of camo pants, he's just got solid green pants. Now, instead of 2 sheathed knives on his right leg, which were molded, the classified figure actually has a removable knife on his left boot, which is really cool. And the molded holster is on his right leg now, and that also is a removable pistol. And those are neat touches, I think, for the newer figures to be able to, take those things out. The new figure has 2 black knee pads and shin guards on the front of his boots, which make him just look tough. I mean, this is really one of my favorite figures from the line. It might even be my favorite. I mean, I had Snake Eyes and Scarlet, and then when I got Beachhead, he's the one that I picked up the most and just kept looking at because it's such a cool design, and he's such a, I don't know, stout maybe is the word I want to use. It just seems like this is a tough figure. Would be a real tough character. Now, his red Ranger beret, which was previously molded onto the vest, is now a separate piece. And it actually does fit nicely on top of his head. Not sure why anyone would wear a Ranger on top of a balaclava, but whatever. Now, like Duke from the last review, Beachhead's backpack is remarkably similar to the original 1986 version. The biggest difference being that the crossbow is now removable. And honestly, I didn't even realize until last night that the crossbow fits into a slot on the backpack. And the reason I didn't realize that, aside from being not too bright, brings me to my only negative really with this figure. And indeed, like the lack of the file cards with the classified figures, this is kind of an issue that I have with the entire classified line. I'm sure you guys remember with the original, and thinking like particularly Duke, the way that the backpacks fit into them was a post on their back that would go into the hole that had the screw. These ones are like that, but it seems like all of them, the post is really small, the holes are really small, and they just don't stay on very good. You could pick those old ones up by the backpack, and that wasn't falling off. But these new ones, they're just not on there very sturdy. Now, as a result, I have all of mine out. All of my figures are out. They're all standing on the desk giving me the evil eye. But most of the accessories, like backpacks and things, I just keep in the boxes, and hadn't even taken Beachhead's backpack out until I started to write this review. It does look cool, and now that I've kind of got it on there and he's just standing there, I put the crossbow in it. It looks really cool. One last thing, he does come with a larger weapon. It's not any gun that I'm familiar with. In fact, I believe, like most of the other weapons included in this line, it's not based on a real gun. I've heard most collectors refer to them as Nerf guns because that's kind of what they look like. Now, the one that he has with the classified figure, it's very similar in shape to the Taver TS-12 semi-automatic 12-gauge shotgun from Israel Weapons Industries. It's not that. It just kind of looks a lot like that. At first, I didn't really like this weapon. Mostly because it's the exact same green as his shirt, which is like a bright green. But I think the longer I've had it on my desk and I've had him holding that it's kind of grown on me. I do have other weapons that I purchased from Bobby Vala's Actionverse, but at this point, it just seems kind of strange to use some of those real world weapons with these figures. Like I said, I've kind of grown on a lot of the weapons that they do have with them, and I feel like it's kind of like seeing a car that's got all kinds of stickers and decals on it. It's like, the original designer didn't put that stuff on there, so why would I change it from the way it was originally designed? I do like the way a lot of these look, and the Beachhead, I really like this figure. Like I said, when I got it, I'm not sure what made me get it at first. I wasn't planning on getting all of the figures. I think I had the promo Snake Eyes, and then I happened to see Cobra Commander in the store. And then I saw Storm Shadow on Amazon. I got that. And that probably got the ball rolling. And then when I got the Beachhead, I just kind of thought, well, that looks kind of cool. But then once I got it and I opened it up, I was like, this is a really neat figure. Like I said, the construction is just really good. It's really one of the best ones they've done. So yeah, that's it for my review of Beachhead. Great character. Very, like I said, one of the most popular characters in the line. If you're a fan of the figures, especially if you're getting the classified figures and you don't have this one yet, definitely recommend that you get it. There's a reason why Beachhead is one of the most popular characters out there, and why this is one of the most popular classified figures.
Yeah, because they sort of dipped, I guess, into him as a figure to pick up as a fan favorite figure. Because I guess the Duke, the Roadblock, Scarlet, Snake Eyes, they're all from a kind of similar era, the sort of instantly iconic ones, and Beachhead's a little bit further along in the
Beachhead
line
is from like the
86.
5th or 6th year of the line. Yeah, he's not, and I don't know how many appearances he made in the cartoon. But definitely not iconic as say Duke or Snake Eyes.
Yeah, I think that affection that people have for him is mostly from the figure of it being such a cool figure and design, and that balaclava and all of the rest.
And
of
it really was. It was just
in terms of the comic, and particularly the Hammerverse, there hasn't been a huge amount of usage of Beachhead. I don't think there's been like a Beachhead centric story. Correct me if I'm missing something obvious, but I think he's always been a bit of a sort of supporting team member just off to the sides without too much focus on him as an individual character. And probably a little bit more in the cartoon, some memorable appearances in the scenes in the movie, and I think a bit more of a featured character, certainly with his own voice actor and all of the rest of it. And I think he was sort of positioned as a kind of sort of like a sub commander, working alongside.
Yeah, one thing I read said that he was like fourth in command.
Yeah,
I think a lot of his popularity does come from just I think from the fact that it's such a real world design. I mean, it looks like this could be straight out of Special Forces. I mean, it's always just been a great design that really resonated with fans.
He's a badass, and we respond to the badasses. Like Snake Eyes is a man of mystery. Roadblock's really big, although he's also really friendly. There is a line in I think it's in Arise Serpentor Arise Part 1, the first episode of Season 2 from 86, where Beachhead says, "If I was in charge," and Falcon says, "But you're not. First it's Hawk, then Duke, then me, then you." And he is throughout Season 2. I think because he's such a tough guy in the show, and that scene that we all love from the animated movie, which is somewhat recalled here on the cover to issue 7, where he's giving a dressing down to a lineup of new Joes.
Rawhides.
I think we respond not just. I mean, Jay, I know certainly my brother was immediately into the toy because he looks so realistic and tough. He doesn't look like the first version of Shipwreck. He doesn't look like Blowtorch.
Yeah.
And I know that I was responding to him because on the show he's a badass.
Yeah. And E6, his rank, that's Staff Sergeant. Definitely Falcon would be able to pull rank on him because Falcon's a lieutenant. But he's like I said, he's just a wicked character. Great design. Always been one of my favorites. That's why I hated to see the ones like the second version is blue or something, and then the third one has like yellow web gear, and I just have to shake my head and think, what are you thinking? You've got like a perfect design right here, and you're going to go complete 180. But I'm really glad that the classified designers have chosen, especially as we get deeper into the line, like Flint and Lady J. They're not out yet, but from the pictures we've seen, they look like the 3 3/4 inch figures just blown up to 6 inch. I mean, there's very little difference with them, and I'm glad that they've gone that way with a lot of them, and they've stuck to what makes the characters iconic.
Yeah, for sure. It's heartening to see that they've taken so much inspiration from the iconic aspects that really have resonated and sort of kept those characters in people's sort of minds and affections for such a long time, and not to chuck that out the window, which I think is a big part of the mistake they made with the original with the GI Joe film franchise, is that there wasn't enough in there that was,
everybody was just dressed in black.
The DNA of GI Joe and the iconic costumes and so on. Cool.
Which is why the Spirit didn't work for me that we talked about last time.
Oh, forgot to mention that. So Spirit.
I think, Tim, you were not a fan of the redesign. Am I correct? It was me and you that didn't like it, and Mark did like it.
Yeah, it just looks like exactly what you said. Just looks like Snake Eyes.
Yeah. And more. And it wasn't just that I liked it and you disliked it. You seemed a little bit shocked by the fact that it was a popular design at the time.
Yeah, for sure. Anybody that disagrees is not going to be allowed to listen to the show anymore.
Okay, so last.
Not kidding. Just kidding.
So on last Disavowed episode, we talked about the Spirit redesign. And specifically, I said that that black sneaky suit look I quite liked, and it was very popular at the time. Resonated well with a lot of fans, and led them to releasing it as a figure. And you two were just incredulous that anyone could like that, and it was far too much like just a generic Snake Eyes suit or whatever. So I put it out to the people, and I asked them the Devil's Due sneak suit design for Spirit. What did you think? For the win or in the bin? And the votes came in as 12 votes for the win and 5 votes for the bin. So 12 to 5.
Wow.
That is a tidal wave of support for the Spirit.
Okay, so let's go. We can go back into this for a second.
Wow.
It's two things. It's that it's all black, and also that there's no articulation. There's no articulation. If you gave him like gloves and then like a chunky vest and then like knee pads or something, and it was all black, it's like, oh, well, he's still a tracker, but it's in black. But it's like, no, he's just wearing his Snake Eyes cosplay. Yes, we should. All the listeners who voted for the win, next time we're in person at a convention, let's talk about this in person. I can shake my head and frown.
The people have spoken
in front of you,
Tim. You're an enemy of democracy.
Yeah, those folks can buy us a drink and try to change our minds.
Oh dear. So there we go. So that's us finished talking about toys. Next up is the moment that everyone's been waiting for. It's Inuen-joe.
This is how the story goes. Attention. At this moment, you are now listening to
Talking Inuen-joe.
If you are offended by words like
Sucking, flesh wound. Willy, Pete. Balls, crystal balls. Hypno shield.
whatever, take the tape out now. This is not a pop album. And by the way, suck my
Grandmother's brick in a Prada handbag.
Now, as a reminder, if you're in the right frame of mind, specifically my mind, then a lot of G.I. Joe names can sound a little bit... That was too long.
You can say it.
A lot of G.I. Joe names can sound a little bit dirty. So the challenge for Tim and Jay is can they get through a list of 10 G.I. Joe names without tittering or indeed guffawing?
I feel like this is unfair because I'm basically 12. I mean, I can't get through anything even halfway.
Well, this is why it's
favorite show is Family Guy.
I'm able to make this segment last longer by having the episodes where you're on it, Jay, because then I don't have to get to the end of 10 and run out of names. Okay, are we ready to go, Tim? You're
ready to
unmuted?
go.
Okay, here we go.
Tim's like, grudgingly.
Okay. Sky Creeper. Big Ben. Ding Dong. Cobra.
Well, that's not fair if you add 2
Ding
words
Dong's
after
not
it.
a name, is it?
That's not fair. Because I smiled, but I wouldn't let myself open my mouth and exhale.
Yeah, I smiled.
Please continue.
To be fair, I said Ding Dong. I didn't go Big Ben. Ding Dong. Okay, we've established that's not allowed.
I'm shaking my head.
We'll wait for the laughter to subside and start again.
Oh boy.
Okay.
It's gonna be hard.
Cobra Overlord's Dictator.
Man.
Tim cracked first. I love it.
I don't like this game, but I hope our listeners do.
That was 3 into 3. Excellent.
And that was totally because of the way you said it. If you'd have just said dictator.
I always say Dick. Tater, like that.
Like 3 distinct syllables?
Yeah, dictator, isn't that everyone? Yeah.
I don't think so. I don't think that's the way Saddam Hussein said.
Yeah, you should hear me read aloud the Nightwing comics to the kids. It's guffaws aplenty.
I'm afraid to.
Every time Batman speaks to Nightwing, he's like, "What do you think you're doing, dick?" So that is us done.
Poor
I think.
Kids. Poor kids.
In a week's time, I think we are back for one more sketchbook special where we will be looking at some of Chris McLeod's sketches and prints that he has collected over the years. That's because we're all up to date on ARAH, so we'll be reading the next issue of that when it lands in a few weeks' time.
Return of Diagnostic 80.
Yeah. But join us back here in a fortnight's time for the next 4-parter, Malfunction, which will cover issues 10 to 13.
And we didn't touch on it in the recap or anything, but that features the return of Zarana.
Yeah,
Fan favorite.
yeah. Back with the Zarana and a lot of Bats action, I believe, as well. You can find us in all of the usual places, talkingjoe.co.uk. The website has links to all of them: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, email, YouTube, and now Patreon as well. So set up there for a £5 a month subscription, and you'll get all sorts of extra goodies, as well as supporting the show and paying off our subscription costs to recording and hosting this stuff. Remind us, Jay, where can people find you?
On Facebook, Jay Cordray or Break Room Sketches.
And Tim, have you got a website? I forget.
Instagram, A Real American Book. Facebook, A Real American Book. Best of all, arealamericanbook.com.
There you go. Hey, do you have a website for your store?
Yeah, Hub Comics, HUB. That's where you can watch our renovation videos. I make and post a new one every Wednesday, and all of them are cataloged at youtube.com/hubcomics, where you can watch them in reverse chronological order. Or if you click on the playlist button, you can watch the first 17 in a row and then the next 15 in a row, because this has been going on forever.
Can we watch them all at once and speed it up and put Benny Hill music in it?
You can, but then you don't get the subtlety of my acting performances and all my editing decisions.
Very good. Okay, yeah. So I'll do the wrap up now. When all's said and done, you can catch us down the road.
Because we've been Talking Joe.
And we're all out of Joes.
Laters.